First, let's start with this case. My brother and his now wife got married 3 days ago. It was a very small destination ceremony with fewer than 15 people in attendance. My fiancé and I decided to extend our trip after everyone else returned home. We spent a couple of days exploring the Grand Canyon, which is a few hours north of the wedding location. During this time, my fiancé proposed to me. When I shared the news with my brother and his wife, his response was unexpectedly hostile. He claimed that it seemed like we were trying to compete with their special moment. I quickly apologized, realizing that my brother was speaking on behalf of his wife and that she might have felt hurt by our timing. Although I struggled to fully understand why she felt this way, I still wanted to address her feelings. I also sent her a separate message, apologizing and explaining that it was never our intent to overshadow their celebration. I emphasized that we just wanted to share our joy with our family and expressed my belief that there's enough room for everyone to experience happiness. Unfortunately, she did not respond to my message. Despite my apologies, my brother remained firm in his stance. He reiterated that the timing and location of our engagement were inconsiderate and suggested that we should have planned things differently to avoid interfering with their wedding. Let's start judging. You're not in the wrong. And I can see you're trying valiantly to understand, but I'm not sure your brother or his wife will be able to give you a good reason for their reaction. Because their reaction is wild. Sure, it's rude to propose at someone else's wedding, but that's not what happened. The fact that you and your fiancé got engaged a few days after their wedding before you flew home is a totally different thing. Also, the level of hostility in that message from your brother is nasty and definitely not normal. I'm so sorry that he treats you like that. You're not in the wrong. You were proposed to days after the wedding while exploring the state the wedding was in, and several hours away from the wedding site. And also, this wedding was an elopement. I get that eloping has changed definitions from essentially marrying in secret and private to generally a small planned wedding. But she's throwing a tantrum as if this were an all-expense-paid luxury wedding in a rented locale and that you were proposed to the same evening as the wedding, steps away from said wedding and announced it in front of everyone. You're not in the wrong. You guys didn't get engaged at the wedding. You guys didn't make a show of announcing your engagement at the wedding. You guys didn't even get engaged the same day as the wedding, which would be a stretch. But I could see pictures in the same outfits you wore being confusing as to whether you got engaged there. You guys waited a couple of days and were at a different location. They got their day. That's what the wedding typically is. Next up, I work as a server at a restaurant. One of my coworkers recently moved here from Georgia for college and started working with us a few months ago. She has a habit of heavily leaning into the Southern charm persona. She frequently calls people honey and sweetie, among other pet names. Additionally, she tends to engage in lengthy conversations with customers after delivering their food or drinks. However, it's clear that many customers would prefer to enjoy their meals in peace. Most respond with one-word answers, but she continues talking as if she doesn't notice. Management has already spoken to her several times about this behavior. A couple of weeks ago, she was visibly upset after a customer angrily told her, "Don't call me that," when she referred to them as honey. She's also been complaining that she isn't earning as many tips as the other servers. She attributes this to her Southern accent, claiming that customers assume she's less capable because of it. However, I believe there's more to it than just her accent. When she asked me for advice, I was honest. I explained that it's likely because she takes too long to serve her tables and spends too much time trying to engage in small talk. I also mentioned that the constant use of pet names might come across as condescending to strangers here. Her response was that she wouldn't start being rude to customers because she thought it would hurt her tips even more. I clarified that it wasn't about being rude, it's about adapting to the local culture. I pointed out that it's actually inconsiderate to other customers who are left waiting while she prioritizes chatting over her tasks. Since then, she's been upset with me and has been avoiding me. I realize I might have come across as blunt, but I was under a lot of stress due to the busy holiday season. I still feel that my feedback was constructive, though perhaps it could have been phrased more gently. Am I the one in the wrong here? Let's start judging. You're not in the wrong. Bit of a culture clash going on here. You've tried to help her fit in better with the locals, and your boss has done the same. But she isn't listening to either of you. You're not in the wrong. I'm from the north and had to learn to be okay with the Southern hospitality pet names when I moved south. Up there, those can be fightin' words. If she doesn't change, she can expect complaints and possibly her job. You're not in the wrong. You're not in the wrong. She needs to read the room. Maybe her style works where she's from, but she's got to adapt to wherever she is. She also has to understand the difference between inserting herself into the guest experience by sticking around for chit-chat and being rude. I used to wait tables, and while it's great to have regulars and develop a rapport with them, you can't do it at the expense of getting their food out quickly or inserting yourself into their conversations. I thought you were clear in explaining what you were seeing and the effect it was having on the guests. Next up, I'll try to keep this as concise as possible while including all the necessary details. I had been with my fiancé for 6 years. He has an older sister who we'll call Sally. She is 28 years old and has a 5-year-old child. I was there the day Sally gave birth, and her child is my niece in every sense but blood. My fiancé's family has referred to me as her aunt since the beginning, and she calls me Auntie. We've spent countless days together having sleepovers, visiting the zoo, and creating wonderful memories. 2 years ago, Sally entered a rehabilitation program due to her struggles with addiction. She had been dependent on substances like alcohol, prescription pain medication, and anti-anxiety medication. After a mental health crisis, the family pooled resources to send her to rehab and worked together to care for her child. At the time, her boyfriend, who works in construction and welding, was away for 2 months due to work commitments. Unfortunately, Sally left the program after only 3 days, claiming she was fine and just needed a safe environment to withdraw. I picked her up from rehab, brought her home, and was immediately disheartened when she turned to drinking beer and using cannabis. While I personally support the responsible use of cannabis, this situation was highly inappropriate given the circumstances. Within a week, Sally's life unraveled further. She lost her job for inappropriate behavior at work, was evicted due to being behind on rent, totaled her car while under the influence, and caused $20,000 worth of water damage to her sister's home by forgetting she had left a sink running. Thankfully, insurance covered the damages, but these events deeply strained her relationships with her family. Over the past year, Sally and her family moved into a new home and have been trying to rebuild. However, in November, she called her father to ask for help with their electricity bill, claiming that her boyfriend's paycheck hadn't gone through. Her father paid the $500 bill, but I found the amount suspiciously high. I chose not to say anything. 2 weeks ago, Sally reached out to me, asking for money to buy groceries for her daughter. I, of course, didn't want them to go hungry, so I agreed to come by later that day. I left work early and arrived at her house earlier than expected, entering with the spare key. When I walked in, I found my niece playing with her dolls, but the house was freezing, likely around 40 degrees Fahrenheit. Sally was passed out on the couch, and to my shock, there was a large quantity of what I recognized as heroin on the coffee table. Alarmed, I immediately took my niece to my car, where I called 911. I feared Sally might be overdosing and didn't want to risk alarming my niece, so I stayed with her in the car and let her play on my phone until help arrived. When emergency services came, so did the police and Child Protective Services. Because my niece's father was still out of town, Sally's parents were called. When they arrived, they were cold and distant, taking my niece with them and telling me to go home. An hour later, I got home and was confronted by my fiancé. He was furious and accused me of overstepping. He told me the family was already aware of Sally's issues and said I had acted out of line and stupid for calling 911 without checking whether Sally was overdosing. Apparently, she had just been nodding out due to her drug use. We argued for hours before I left to stay with a friend. The next day, I turned my phone on to find over 65 messages from family members blaming me for making the situation worse. They accused me of ruining Sally's life, complicating matters for my niece, and making a private issue public. They said I had destroyed any chance Sally had of regaining custody of her child. Some even threatened legal action against me, demanding I pay Sally's bail or cover emotional damages. My fiancé broke up with me, leaving me to face the loss of not only my partner of 10 years, but also my home, the family I had considered my own, and my beloved niece. Initially, I felt confident in my decision, believing I had acted in the best interest of my niece. However, as the days pass, I find myself questioning everything. Should I have checked on Sally first? Did I overreact? I know my actions led to my niece being separated from her parents, and I feel immense guilt. Though I know someone in the family will take her in, it's not the same as being raised by her parents. I fear she'll grow up resenting me, despite all the love I've shown her. Now, I can barely eat or sleep, and my anxiety has been overwhelming. I feel like I've lost everything, and I'm haunted by the thought that I might have made the wrong choice. Let's start judging. You're not in the wrong. What if she was ODing and you assumed she was nodding? What would the family say then? Be thankful you got out of that toxic relationship. Sorry to say, but they all sound like a bunch of degenerates. You're not in the wrong. 1,000%. That entire family is enabling her. There was no heat, no food, and Lord knows what else. She caused thousands in damage, and I bet that the money she's been getting to pay bills has been going to drugs. She will be forced to get clean if she ever wants her kid back. That kid deserves a way better home than what they are giving her. Your ex-fiancé is deep in the fog and denial. They all are supporting the abuse of a child. You didn't do a single thing wrong. You did everything correctly. The most you can do is maybe write a letter to the social worker that is dealing with the case. Outline the manipulation, how long the drug use has been going on, and instances where the child was going without, like heat, food, water, whatever. Don't beat yourself up. You got rid of a few hundreds pounds of crazy. You're not in the wrong. I'm almost never in favor of someone who posts here actually calling CPS, because in most cases they aren't informed enough to make that call. But I think you were in the right here. That's a hollow victory considering all you've lost and will lose as this situation develops. But you should know you did the right thing. That child was unsupervised in unsafe conditions. As much as your former in-laws wanted this to be a family affair, it looks like the family lost control of this situation long ago, and by choosing to collectively lash out at you for this instead of including you in being part of the solution, they've proved they either don't know what's best for this child or aren't willing to do what's necessary here. The trauma sucks. I'm sorry you have to suffer for this. But every night that girl sleeps in a warm, safe bed will be in part because of you. Best of luck sorting through all the mess. You did good. Next up, I'm 38 years old, and I'm celebrating Christmas with my mom, who is 68, and my brother, who is 47, along with his family. My mom flew in from out of state, and we are all driving to a shared holiday location in the mountains. This spot is a place we all enjoy for the holidays, and it allows us to come together despite living far apart. Our mom being the furthest, on the opposite coast, and my brother and I several hours apart by car. Unfortunately, while my mom has been staying at my house, we received the upsetting news that her pipes froze and caused flooding in her basement. Understandably, she was very distressed. I stepped in to help her get everything started with the insurance company, cleanup crew, and general contractor, all of whom are working on her home while she is here. However, my mom then brought up the idea of extending her stay at my house beyond the planned 1 week, saying she'd like to stay 2 weeks or more. I told her no because I need to return to my normal routine and prepare for work. I let her know she was still welcome to stay as planned, which was until Saturday. She then mentioned possibly asking my brother and his family if she could ride back with them to their home in another state, which is in the opposite direction from me. However, she refused to bring this up with him until Christmas Day. To avoid blindsiding my brother and his family, I gave him a heads up last night so he could discuss it with his wife beforehand. I also made it clear to him that he wasn't obligated to say yes, since my mom still has the option to stay with me until Saturday. and her insurance is expected to cover most of her hotel and meal expenses if her home is deemed uninhabitable, though this hasn't been confirmed yet. My brother told me that he didn't have room to take her back with him. His car is already full with 3 people and luggage, leaving no space for a 4th passenger. He also suggested that I let her stay with me longer because she's lonely. I explained that while I understand her feelings, I'm not wrong for wanting to stick to the original plan. I haven't heard back from him since, as he left my message on read. My mom can be a challenging personality under normal circumstances, and this recent crisis has understandably made her even more difficult to be around. While I love her, I'm feeling exhausted. I want my space back, and I need time to recharge without dealing with constant criticism and complaints. So I'm wondering, am I in the wrong for prioritizing my own space and personal downtime over my mother's emotional needs during this unfortunate situation? Let's start judging. No one is in the wrong, but I think you should take this one on the chin, because if you want to keep talking to your mom, you will probably never hear the end of this otherwise. It's a lightning strike situation. There's a good reason she can't just go back to her home that is unlikely to ever occur again. You're not in the wrong. Your brother also doesn't want to bring her to his home. He has plenty of room in his car. No one is in the wrong, but this is tough. It's not like you owe her a place to stay, especially when insurance will pay. But I don't think I could tell my mom to go stay at a hotel during the holidays.